And I remembered I asked you for advice on this one.
You did. I think you didn't. I think, like, to you it meant different things, and that was a moment of, like, doubt or something.
And I think I said, what if not all of these feelings are about the same person? Not about the same person. It was never anything like he would ever know that I liked him. Because I don't ever confess that sort of thing in real life. But I really do like to confess it in this fantasy music life that I get to live.
Hey everyone! Welcome back to Casually Unperturbed. Last week we talked about some of the songs from Reputation, or more specifically, some of the lyrics that talk about star-crossed lovers who fell in love at first sight, but for whatever reason, didn't work out in the long run, potentially showing a secret affair between Taylor Swift and Matty Healy. If you haven't checked that yet, go ahead and give it a shot. It is linked in the description below. Today, we will deep dive into two of my favorite albums, Folklore and Evermore, which also has way more concrete evidence of the lore between our two main figures. Before we begin, I want to make it clear that this isn't about simplifying her music to a kind of paternity test. Instead, it's about exploring how different muses and complicated moments in someone's life can shape their art, often without them even realizing it. I find it fascinating that two people, Taylor Swift and Matty Healy, who were in the public eye for years, seem to be communicating with each other through their music, something the rest of us had no idea about. And none of what I'm going to say will make sense, unless we talk about two pivotal songs from TTPD, which is Chloe or Sam or Sophia or Marcus, and Peter. These songs, in my opinion, are so intertwined, so much so that you cannot talk about one without talking about the other. Chloe or Sam exists because Peter exists, and vice versa. Peter, in my opinion, has to be understood first, before we can fully grasp Chloe at all. Peter talks about a Peter Pan-esque figure who refused to grow up and wanted to stay in Neverland, even if it meant that he had to leave Wendy behind. Matty has referred to himself as Peter Pan, like multiple times, and his band as the Lost Boys.
You know, like the Lost Boys in Peter Pan, it's only in 80s movies where people go like, they're like 4 13-year-olds spit in their hands, they put it in the middle and they go, we're gonna stay together forever. Do you know what I mean?
The song begins with an apology, for although she tried to preserve him in cedar closets that protect items from damage, they never got to live the life they wanted. He was the right person at the wrong time, or so she thought when she waited by the window with her light on. And this image, of the waiting woman by the window with a light on, is particularly common in English literature as the place of a woman while her husband is out fighting wars. Patriarchy dictated that men should come back while women can only passively wait. They cannot be active and take fate into their own hands by doing something. Perhaps even Taylor got caught up in this idea of patriarchy, waiting for her Peter to actively take a step while she waited passively. She also confirms this feeling by saying that her Peter had promised to come back for her after he grew up, but he never did. She tried to move on too, but in the back of her mind, she always thought that Peter was her end game. So she let the lamp burn until she was tired of waiting, realizing that he was only 25 when he made that promise. And although the girl inside of her believed him and waited for him, her older self, or the woman inside her, convinced her that this was just a fantasy. And the expiration date for the fantasy had come, showing a more logical way of thinking that is more adult-like. So she apologizes to her Peter and says that she tried her best to wait by revisiting their memories over and over again, but she is turning off the light now. It's truly a very sad song. When we get to Chloe or Sam, we see more details on what happened between Peter, in this case, Matty, and her. The first line of seeing someone's hologram shows how real it felt when she saw him with other people. It's very telling that she didn't use words like shadow or other words that can evoke a 2D imagery. Hologram is a 3D image, and that 3D experiences, as we know, help us feel more connected and experience the visuals rather than watching on a phone screen, for example. Using the names Chloe or Sam or Sophia or Marcus tells me that she personally didn't care who he was with, their names, their race, or their nationality, because it was not her, the person he should be with. Even after this, she did nothing. She waited passively by the window. Even after 10 years, they were still believing that maybe someday they would get back together, and she calls them fools for believing that. Meanwhile, she did the same too. She moved on with other men, and he did nothing too. He also just watched it passively. The next few lines says that she may have changed herself, become more cold in love with the other men, because her Peter hadn't come for her yet. But all it takes for that cold heart to break is if he tells her that he loved her, the way that she was. I think she is saying that she would either die because cold objects can shatter and cannot be put back together, or that her coldness would melt away and she is afraid she will go back to being her younger self, who was so foolish and intense in love. And if he says he has always wondered, that would be enough to tear her perfectly curated world. She then explains what happened between them. He had turned her into an idea instead of loving her exactly as she was. Isn't this why her cold heart broke in the first place? Because he said he loved her the way she was, but he didn't. He loved only the idea of her. She also talks about addiction, and she couldn't handle seeing him go down that path, probably when they were both 25. It is truly difficult to support someone through their addiction. And as she says in the next few lines, she was way too young, she didn't know what to do. So she deserted him or he deserted her, because it's difficult to understand these dynamics when you are in love with someone who struggles with addiction. She changed herself into goddesses, villains, and fools to try different personas, lovers, outfits, but nothing filled the hole inside of her that was created after she left him. Now to the saddest part of the song. Now, if they move on with other people, would that be enough to forget everything they went through together? If he has kids with someone else, and she moves on to other people and other places, and they meet in social circles like colleagues, would that be enough? Watching wild horses is also an expression that is used to say, nothing can persuade someone to do something. For example, wild horses cannot make me eat broccoli. It is also used to refer to youth and how youngsters are asked to keep running and never look back, like wild horses. Maybe she means, should we hold on to our memories of the youth, and would that be enough to move on from this scarlet maroon? And she ends the song by saying, do you wonder? Because she always will. My God, the layers of this song just keeps unfolding the more you listen to it. These two songs give us an idea about how deep their relationship was with each other. It wasn't simply a short 1-month relationship like we saw in the media headlines, but a rather draw-out 10-year-old relationship. Mostly, they may have been in contact over the 10 years, waiting for a time when both were single. Now that we know all this, we need to deep dive into Folklore and Evermore with the information from TTPD. These two albums are full-off gray characters, and I wouldn't be surprised if Taylor used these characters to process her own feelings during that time, where she probably was truly stuck between believing Matty when he planted roots in her mind, as said in Ivy, versus staying with the safe option, which was Joe Alwyn. So with that, let's begin with the title track of Folklore, The One. Taylor also said that folklore is about fictional characters and fictional settings, and there is an element of truth to it. She is fantasizing about some situations that could have been and making characters based on people she knew, which is also why The One acts as the perfect opening track for Folklore, because it has a tinge of both realness and fictional element to it. While the what if acts as a fantasy part, the element of realness is hypothesized to be the moment in Emmy Awards 2020, where Matty went and talked to Taylor, probably trying to catch up. And if I'm not wrong, this was the catalyst for the beginning of Folklore. Matty later references this interaction with Zane Lowe, and soon after, Folklore is released. To make matters more clear, Taylor also switched the song Invisible Strings to the Want in the Eras tour set list, just before announcing her breakup with Joe Alwyn. The One is a song where she is catching up with an ex-lover and going into a rabbit hole of what-if situations. If I had done that, would you have been mine? If you had not done that, would we still be together? The One is also a fun reference to Matty as the frontman of the 1975. Do you get it? The frontman of the 1975? The One? So the song begins with updating your ex-lover on how your life is going now, and starting off with a positive note, possibly directly referencing their NME interaction. The rabbit hole, or the fantasy part, starts with the if statements, and the lyrics, "If you never bleed, you are never gonna grow," directly references an iconic song from the 1975, which is Chocolate, which has almost the same lyric, "If you never eat, you'll never grow." It probably refers to a naivety in youth where you make a lot of mistakes with the person you love and maybe even, perhaps, lose the love of your life. But she says it's all right though because she is doing good, but she just cannot stop digging the grave. So she says that it still would have been fun if he had been the one. The song also references 20s and youth, something that she does a lot when referring to Matty. The lyric, "Rosé flowing with your chosen family," paralleling lyrics from Maroon. "Your cheap-ass screw-top rosé. You meet some woman on the internet and take her home," is also a reference to the 1975's album Brief Inquiry into Online Relationships. And the song ends with the clarification that she is asking all this because she just can't stop digging the grave one more time. Goosebumps. Next, we traverse into the cold waters of Cardigan, and we cannot talk about Cardigan without talking about the unhinged and iconic moment in 2023 where Matty and Taylor both mouthed "I love you" to the camera before singing about you and Cardigan respectively. The shock that I shocked when this happened. But it's not so surprising now, in retrospect, given that Cardigan talks about a young love so intense and passionate that it feels like a once-in-a-lifetime love. The first few lines of High Heels on Cobblestones and Black Lipstick could refer to their alleged brief stint in 2016 that I referred to in the last video. She is also talking about a specific place in NYC that might be emotionally relevant to both Matty and Taylor, which is the High Line. The Manhattan High Line lies on a rail trail and starts very close to one of Taylor's apartments in Chelsea. Now, it is possible that Matty and Taylor may have had intimate moments in this particular place, given that Taylor has mentioned how he used to live in a different part of town. And there are also multiple references to trains, going in opposite directions, or taking the last train, etc., in both Taylor's and Matty's songwriting. Though we can only guess at the exact meaning of trains and its significance. She also suggests that he is the one who fucked up, with the lyrics, "leaving like a father, running like water." Leaving like a father reminds me of a feeling when someone you never thought will leave does. And how that experience and that pain will stay with you forever. Yet, it's also a pain that is so familiar, because somehow all of us can relate to a feeling like that. So, it is the experience that would change you forever. She then follows it up with, "But I knew you will linger like a tattoo kiss and haunt all of my what-ifs," essentially saying that people might say you are young, you are desirable, this was just one small relationship, and that you will move on and find love. But even as a kid, she knew in the back of her mind that this was her one. Everything else will be second best. This love will be like a permanent ghost, haunting you forever. The lyrics also refer to a Peter Pan-esque figure who didn't want to grow up and ends up losing Wendy. Of course, the song, Peter, that we talked about, is exactly describing the same love and the same experience. But then she says that she knew that he would feel the same way too with the lyrics, "I knew you would come back to me." It's really very poetic, sad, and hopeful at the same time. Cardigan also connects a lot of dots. For example, "Standing in your front porch" light to lyrics from Fresh Off the Slammer, and gives us an understanding of why this love was so all-consuming for her. The idea of being an old cardigan under someone's bed is also very reminiscent of, "There are many different ways you can kill someone you love, and the slowest way is never loving them enough," from High Infidelity. Also, "You put me on and said I was your favorite," is also very similar to, "Do I really have to tell you how he brought me back to life?" We then get into August, which is the perspective of the other girl involved in the triangle situation between Betty in Cardigan, James in Betty, and Augusta or Augustine in August. I personally think that Taylor can relate to the feeling of something so temporary, yet so passionate, that you are afraid to call it real, because it wasn't your place to do that. This song represents hope and waiting, that maybe one day, maybe today, the person I love will call me and will want to meet me, even for a moment. I am always waiting for you to be waiting below. The song Betty is from the perspective of James, a teenage boy, who messed up with his one true love by having a summer fling with Augusta or Augustine. Now, I would imagine that although Joe wrote the chorus of Betty, Taylor herself was flirting with the idea of having someone in the back of your mind while you are with someone else, which is explained in greater detail in Illicit Affairs, which talks about potentially cheating emotionally or physically. And we know that Taylor especially loves to sing, "Don't call me kid, don't call me baby," and so on until "You taught me a secret language I can't speak with anyone else." This is so true because Matty has been writing songs that touch upon their relationship for so long now, and it's a language only they both will understand. It also indicates a desperation on her part of not knowing what to do, because this love has left her completely unhinged. Take my hand, wreck my plans. And she dreams of a day when he would come back to her and probably apologize for all the fucked up things that happened between them. Finally, the most interesting song ends the album, which is Hoax. In the Long Pond sessions, she talks about this song probably being about more than one person, and this being her first foray into something like that. I would guess the smoking gun refers to Matty, and Eclipsed Sun refers to Joe. And she is battling having feelings for both of them at the same time and conflicted on what is the right course of action. Folklore. The whole album, I think, was a way to process this feeling of conflict somehow, because as a songwriter, she has to put in a song to make sense of it herself. So it's a perfect closing track too, because it has shades of people and some other events, like her masters being stolen from her, and the Kim Yi situation, that truly affected her. And all of these events have somehow hurt her, but also made her the person that she is today, because Folklore would never exist without these events and secret musings. In Evermore, although the music video of Willow has some references to Matty, we have way more concrete references in Gold Rush. Starting with the first few lines, again referencing a starry-eyed lover, and now also adding metaphors of sinking ships. She also says she doesn't like anticipating her face in a red flush. Paralleling lyrics from Maroon, where she says, "Blood rushed into my cheeks, so scarlet it was, maroon. Everybody liked to wonder what it would be like to love you, and everybody wants you." Also perfectly parallels lyrics from Slut, which is, "Everybody wants him, that was my crime." Again, famously referencing Matty. "At dinner parties, I call you out on your contrarian shit," is also very similar to the 1975 song Sincerity is Scary, where he talks about a girl who is not like other girls. LOML anyone? And then proceeds to say, "Instead of calling me out, you should be pulling me in." Calling out someone on their contrarian shit? I think so. Then the bridge is very telling. "My mind turns your life into folklore, I can't dare to dream about you anymore," and so on. Is she saying that if she keeps dreaming about him, she might just actually jump in and fall for the temptation? "I dream of cracking locks," from Guilty as Sin. "Can't dare to dream about you" also references the title of the 1975 song About You, which was dedicated to Taylor before Matty said "I love you" on camera. "'Tis the Damn Season" also paints a story of a young love that did not work out because the girl decided to move away from the city to pursue her career. The thesis statement of this song is, in my opinion, that there was only ever one person who could still tell which smiles she were faking, so showing how much they knew each other, like twins, if I may say so. Then Coney Island, I think, talks about all her past loves and her understanding that she didn't make any one of them her centerfold, and vice versa. In one line, she says, "Were you waiting at our old spot in the tree line by the gold clock? Did I leave you hanging every single day?" Interestingly, there was a gold clock in the High Line in NYC, which could be what she is referring to as their old spot, but it was only there from sometime in 2019 to 2020. It is possible that they hung out in the High Line sometime during this, or it could be other places in NYC that she is referring to, but I am pretty sure that this has something to do with the High Line. Ivy is the song which really delves into what was going on between them at that point. When I heard it first, I didn't understand it at all, but now that I have sat with this album, I have a very special place for this song in my heart. I have always taken the lyric "where the spirit meets the bone" to mean bearing your soul out to someone. In contrast to how she says in Chloe or Sam, "Saw my bones out with someone new," where only her body, only a part of her was available to other people, and Matty knew that. But she was able to fully be herself with her one true love, bones and spirit. In A Faith-Forgotten Land is also a nod to Guilty as Sin, where she says, "Someone said there's no such thing as bad thoughts, only your actions talk." Then she references a glow very similar to Snow in the Beach, someone lit from within. "My pain fits in the palm of your hand, always meant for me," that her pain is reflected in someone's writing, in their palm, in this case, Matty's palm. Lyrics from Tonight, "I Wish I Was Your Boy" by the 1975 also parallels this, where he says, "How can I be yours if you are not mine?" She said, "They should take this pain and give it a name." Taylor then proceeds to say that her pain has been promised to another, but she cannot stop him from putting roots in her mind. This clearly suggests that Matty and Taylor were at least emotionally cheating when she was with Joe, because she just cannot stop Matty from putting roots in her mind about what it would be like if he was the one. The rest of the song goes on about her wish to run away from her husband, or the promised other, to his arms, because the begged and borrowed moments with Matty was all she was living for. All those nights you kept me going, from Fresh Off the Slammer. The lines, "So, yeah, it's a war, it's the goddamn fight of my life and you started it," is also very similar to the 1975 song The City. Don't call it a fight when you know it's a war, which was the song that was famously covered by Taylor before the 1975's show in 2023.
Don't call it a fight when you know it's a war.
Ivy is very thematically similar to Guilty as Sin in that she is flirting with the idea of cheating or engaging on at least emotionally cheating while she was in a not-so-fulfilling relationship. The next song, Cowboy Like Me, was also confusing for me until I heard this.
One of my heroes, like Brian Eno, and he kind of splits art into kind of two categories, like cowboys and farmers. And farmers, like to cultivate their thing and keep it the same. And cowboys like to kind of go out and find new pastures. And I think that there's so many incredibly, wonderfully talented people in this room. And I don't have any advice because I'm really scared and I feel really small. But my only advice would be just be a cowboy. So
now that is the second Enemy Matty reference that Taylor is putting into a song. Eyes Full of Stars, again referencing a starry-eyed lover. The lyrics also references Waiting by the Phone, paralleling lyrics from Maroon. This song indicates love between two people who are so similar that they can almost read each other's mind. Taylor has also referenced losing Matty as a feeling similar to losing a twin, showing a similar idea. And it is also so sad to think that your boots underneath my bed changed to, did you sleep with a gun underneath our bed on the smallest man who ever lived? Forever is the sweetest con, also referring to lyrics from LOML, which is, a con man sells a fool a get-love-quick scheme. And the repeating chorus, I'm never gonna love again, is literally word by word what is in the 1975 song Happiness, which was released after Folklore and Evermore. Evermore ends with 2 bonus tracks, which kind of hints at a resolution of the conflict she had in her mind between Matty and Joe. Right Where You Left Me probably talks about Taylor's feelings after her breakup with Matty and her inability to move on from it. Everyone else moved on and everyone else thought this was just another breakup. But it changed her to such an extent that nothing else even mattered after she lost that one love. In Red, she said that time moves differently when you are heartbroken, a concept very similar to what she is talking about in this song. In the final track of the album, It's Time to Go, she talks about her final decision to leave her relationship with Joe, which is ultimately what is right for her in her mind. It's Time to Go is also about multiple fractured situations across her life. The first few lines talks about a relationship that has lost its spark, and one of the partners ultimately leaves the relationship. I think that Folklore and Evermore acted as a catharsis for her in terms of understanding and coming to terms with her triangle situation with Matty and Joe. The clarity of what she ultimately decided to do is also very evident in the final tracks of Evermore, which is why I think she stopped with Evermore as her final album in a fantasy land with fictional characters. So, that's the end of Folklore and Evermore. Now in our next video, we will deep dive into Midnights and TTPD, her final 2 albums about their decade-long relationship. Meanwhile, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And please leave a comment if you enjoyed this video.